All right, welcome back. Today we're tackling the final and honestly the most powerful principles from Napoleon Hill's legendary book, Think and Grow Rich. If you think of the first 11 steps as building this incredible engine for success, well, these last two, this is where you plug that engine into a universal power source. And Hill himself said it best. He called this final step the absolute apex, the peak of his entire philosophy. So these last two principles, the brain and the sixth sense, they aren't just extra steps. Nope. They are the culmination of everything that came before. This is the secret to shifting from just being successful to becoming what Hill would call a true genius. So, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at why these principles are considered the capstone of the whole thing. Then, we'll get into this wild idea of the brain as a mental radio, figure out how to boost its signal, and then tap into the sixth sense. We'll even look at Hill's very personal technique for doing this, and then we'll wrap up with a big question for you. Okay, let's dive in. So you've mastered desire, faith, planning, persistence. You've done all the hard work. Now we finally get to the principles that harness the power of your mind itself, connecting it to a source of knowledge that's way beyond our own individual experience. And Hill's point here is it's huge. The first 11 steps, they get you in the game. They absolutely make you a success. But these last two, they put you on a completely different level of play. This is all about transforming your mind into an instrument that can receive incredible insights and ideas that seem to just pop out of nowhere. So to really get this next idea, Hill uses this really powerful metaphor for the mind, one that was, frankly, super futuristic for his time. He wants us to imagine our brain not as some box that holds information, but as a complex, two-way radio. And this right here is the heart of the 12th principle. Your brain is not an island. Hill is saying it's constantly broadcasting your most dominant thoughts, and at the same time, it's able to receive thought vibrations from the universe, what he calls infinite intelligence. So it's an active player in this huge cosmic field of thought. And this breaks it down perfectly, right? You've got these two functions. The broadcasting part is all driven by your creative imagination. When you form that definite purpose and you back it with that burning desire and faith, you're sending a powerful signal out there. The receiving part, well, that's your subconscious mind. It acts like an antenna, picking up signals that are in harmony on the same frequency as your own thoughts. So, if our brain is a radio, the next logical question has to be, how do we turn up the power, right? How do we boost the signal and tune into those frequencies of genius and inspiration instead of just getting a bunch of static? Hill is super specific about this. He lays out two main ways to step up the vibrational rate of your mind to a much higher level. The first is through a mastermind alliance, and the second is through something he calls the transmutation of sex energy. Now, when two or more minds get together in what Hill calls a spirit of perfect harmony, something amazing happens. It's not just 1 + 1 = 2. It's more like multiplication. A third invisible mind is created, the mastermind, and the incredible energy from this alliance becomes available to every single person in that group. It just dramatically boosts their mental broadcasting power. And this is where it all comes together. When your mental radio is fired up and operating at this new, higher frequency, that's when you'll unlock the door to the 13th and final principle, the absolute pinnacle of Hill's entire philosophy. So the sixth sense is basically your direct line to infinite intelligence. It's that part of you that delivers those flashes of inspiration. Those sudden hunches that solve a problem you've been wrestling with for weeks? It is the bridge between your finite mind and this universal storehouse of all knowledge. For Hill, this is genius in action. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. You can't just read about the sixth sense and get it. It's not something that can be taught like a formula. It has to be developed. Hill is very clear that it only really starts to work on its own after you've mastered all the other 12 principles. It's a state of mind that you literally have to grow into. Now, what's so cool about this is that Hill gives us this deeply personal, almost mystical technique for actively building this connection. And honestly, it's one of the most memorable parts of the whole book. See, Hill knew he had his own limitations to overcome. So what did he do? He created a mastermind group in his imagination. And it was made up of the greatest thinkers and leaders from history. And every single night, he would hold a meeting with them.
And just look at this lineup. I mean, come on. He chose giants like Abraham Lincoln for his sense of justice, Thomas Edison for his incredible faith and persistence, and Andrew Carnegie for his genius and organized effort. He wasn't just daydreaming here. He was actively trying to absorb the very essence of their characters.
And the process itself was this disciplined ritual.
Every night, he'd close his eyes, he'd visualize this council table, and then, acting as the chairman, he would speak to each member, out loud, asking for the specific qualities he wanted to build into his own character.
And here's an example of what he would actually say. Notice how specific it is. He's not just kind of wishing he was great, he's using focused auto-suggestion, programming his subconscious mind with the exact traits he wanted by asking for them from the source.
Now, this is where the story gets really wild. After months of doing this, Hills said the imaginary figures became, well, real to him. They developed their own personalities, they would have witty conversations, and they started offering him advice and solutions to problems that he hadn't even consciously thought of. It's like he had genuinely tapped into some other source of wisdom.
So what does this all mean for us? All of these big, kind of abstract ideas. The brain is a radio, the sixth sense, they all point to one incredibly empowering truth about the potential of the human mind.
Here's the bottom line. Your mind is so much more powerful than you probably realize. It's an antenna in a universe that is just vibrating with thought. And by mastering all those principles, desire, faith, persistence, you're not just improving yourself. You are literally tuning your receiver to a higher frequency, the frequency where ideas, inspiration, and genius are being broadcast all the time.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative thought. If you were going to adopt Hill's technique, like starting tonight, who would you invite to your table? Who would be on your council of invisible counselors? Whose wisdom, whose courage, or whose creativity would you want to build into your own character? The answer to that question might just be the very first step on your own path to genius.